Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Diablo 4 Season 5. If you want to level an alt in Season 5, the video here is going to cover everything you need to know to maximize your time to XP. It has genuinely never been easier, and it seems to stay that way every new season. It just gets faster and smoother, and we've had quite a few changes to compare to the previous season. New content, sure, but changes to elixir stacking, incense, the new tempering comedy that happened, and more. Not to mention the new Infernal Hordes, which has been insane for XP during leveling compared to how bad it was in the PTR. So as a heads up, this guide aims to tell you how to level yourself, but I will also cover the true fastest method, which is being carried in the correct content. Let's first though get into the important ways you can increase your XP gains during leveling, like how they changed the XP gain from killing enemies higher level than you. We now get max benefits from killing enemies up to 30 levels above your own instead of just 10, and then beyond that's not a massive change. So if you're getting destroyed by enemies 30 levels above your own, you shouldn't force it, but if you can handle around 30 levels above your own, then it will be really helpful. They made the profane mine cages stack up to 3 times with that in mind, maxing out at 30 levels above your own in Helltide, so pretty relevant and handy. Let's now talk about buffs. So at the Alchemist, you can craft yourself some elixirs. As you can see, there's 3 kinds: Quest, Basic, and Advanced. Let's talk about basic elixirs, which are the ones that you're going to be able to do the earliest. As you can see, they come in different levels of requirement, like this one's level 40. But you can get these for 5 bundled herbs, which is nothing, as early as level 10. And they're all going to provide the same amount of XP at level 1 elixir, which is 5%. The advanced elixirs, by comparison, are giving you higher stats, as well as XP going up to 8% increase compared to 5%. But as you can see, you can only use level 2 elixirs at level 50 and above, but obviously you want to transfer to these as soon as you have them available. Now, something we need to cover is the original quest elixir and what we're doing in Season 4, which was double stacking elixirs using this one. There's this side quest called Pinch of Poison, and once you completed it, you were able to craft these, the elixir of anti-venom. Part of why we would do this is because you could stack 2 elixirs, so in endgame that's relevant because this is giving us extra max life. Really nice. But obviously that 8% is definitely relevant. And while this no longer double stacks like it did in Season 4, by comparison, you can see that you can actually use this at level 35. So you could get that 8% XP increase at level 35 instead of having to wait for advanced elixirs at level 50. So if you've already done that side quest and got this unlocked, it is definitely worth running. So our quest elixir isn't what it once was, but there is some relevance to it. But swings and roundabouts, we also have incense, which are working slightly different in this season. While leveling, you can definitely consider running an incense buff compared to before on top of your elixir buff. As you can see, it's going to increase your experience gain by 5%, but it only lasts 20 minutes. The big change here this season for incense is that it will not drop off when you die, so you don't need to stress about, not dying when you're using them, which is such a nice change. For crafting, for us, you want to go to the Song of Mountain. This is as early as level 45 that you can start using this, but if you can stack this with an elixir, it's obviously worth it. I should also mention that there are different types of incense. As you can see, this is a type 1 elixir. We also have type 2 elixirs and type 3. Technically, you can stack up to 3 of these at once to get all the different buffs, but it's not going to increase the XP gain. That's 5% no matter what you do. So don't worry about that either. Lastly, I better mention the season blessings. As you progress the battle pass, obviously you get the smoldering ashes. You spend these on your seasonal blessings, and you want to max out Urn of Aggression as soon as possible to get the 20% increase for killing monsters. That's the priority number 1. So that's XP buffs. What about gear during the journey? Well, there's this really important concept you're going to want to be aware of for Season 5, alongside the usual tricks I'll mention, and that's tempering. Tempering had a funny thing happen this season. Essentially, to temper, you need the recipe, and you can improve those recipes to get the highest level versions of them, and that should be a process that we do throughout the season. But something funny happened this season. All the recipes that you'd unlocked and maxed out came over from Season 4. Now sure, some original recipes have been changed and there's new ones to collect, but many of the originals were there again to use immediately. They've since acknowledged that mistake and said for Season 5 it's going to stay, but don't expect that to happen again. Having said that, even if you missed Season 4, at this point you'll have been playing a main, right? And you'll have got what you needed, most likely have maxed them out anyway. But while you're leveling, you want to take advantage of this. It's really important. You want to take tempers that give you flat damage increases. As you can see, Elemental Surge here is going to give us a % chance, unlucky here, to deal physical damage, between 2,000 and 4,000 in this specific case. This is great because it's a flat damage number. Imagine I'm level 1 and I'm doing like 10 damage, and yet I have this on my weapon. So most of the time I'm doing like 5 damage, 10 damage. Suddenly I hit them for 4,000. That's going to kill anything that I'm fighting in that context. And that's not the only thing. If you go to offensive, you've got natural finesse, which is going to give you flat damage increase, even close enemies or distant enemies, even bigger numbers. But all of these are giving us flat percent increases, not multipliers. Because multipliers, if we're just starting out with really low gear, it's going to multiply our very little numbers to still very little numbers. When you slam on these massive additive increases, it's ridiculous for the damage increase. And it's not just that. In terms of defensive, we have worldly, which can just give you flat increases to max life, making you hilariously survivable even at the low levels. So if you have these max level tempo recipes or whatever, just make sure you're using them while leveling to increase your output massively by using flat number increases, whether that's flat damage or those chance to deal thousands of damage on proc, and you'll find yourself dealing way more damage suddenly. It's true you'll be changing your weapon a lot, but there are lots of slots that, you won't swap until you go to Sacred and then Ancestral. And let's say you're about to do a Capstone, slapping on a temper on your weapon at the time is still going to be worth it in that scenario. So absolutely make use of tempering when you've got these higher level recipes to use on a lower level ult. What about actually getting gear for an ult? Well, one thing you can definitely consider here is the stash of your main and considering what you can use on your ult and when. Obviously, there's going to be some item overlap. There's universal stuff that can be equipped by different classes. On that note, there's still an absolutely insane concept, which is mythic uniques. If we scroll down on this grandfather, you can see that I'm going to need to be level 35 before I can put this on. Imagine a level 35 with a grandfather, a 925 weapon. It's honestly comical, so if you have any mythic uniques from your main, you'll be able to consider giving that to your ult, at least for a little while, to give it that bonus. Just be aware that it's not always the same. For example, the Harlequin quest here, that requires level 90, so it's still useful once my ult's level 90, but before then, not so relevant. But obviously it varies. This one requires level 60 with the Doombringer, so check your mythic uniques and consider if maybe your ult can use it. Last couple things I should mention is your codex. Obviously, you're going to be able to bring some of the codex stuff you found to your ult. If it's more universal rather than class specific, that's going to be quite relevant. This could help get a build online or make it much more survivable much earlier. And the other thing I wanted to mention is the season journey. As you go through these different chapters, you get different rewards, such as legendary drops, even uniques and so on. And the idea behind this is they want to push you towards a specific build for your class this season. Usually it's something they buffed or changed they want people to play. So it can get one of your strongest builds online very quickly, if not the strongest build, by progressing this. So you definitely want to be claiming those. Alright, for the method itself, for leveling, there's a couple things you're going to need to consider. Technically, the fastest way is to have a friend or someone instantly drag you through both capstones to World Tier 4, where you're going to get the maximum XP per kill. Then, you can have this person grind you through harder content like Nightmare Dungeons, or maybe even Infernal Hordes, while you stand there and leech XP. If you've got one person boosting you, then you're probably going to be in Nightmare Dungeons as the only real option, since you'll be dead in the Hordes instantly, since there's nowhere to hide. But if you did have multiple people boosting you for some reason, then you could have one person designated to spam revive you, and the XP increase from doing it that way actually really good. You'll be level 50 in no time, even though you're dying a lot, so it's an option. If you do have people willing to boost you, then it's a valid and fast pick. And not just that, it's extremely efficient to be carried in that way. I think that's the best method. However, it's so unreasonable for me to tell people to do that in a guide like this, especially for someone who's just playing solo. So while I'm mentioning the best method, which is to be carried in Infernal Hordes or Nightmare Dungeons if you have to, if you actually want to play the game, here's a more detailed method to level yourself. The answer to what's the fastest way to level in Season 5 is indeed the new mechanic, Infernal Hordes. The XP value here is stupid, but you're going to have to first reach them, which is World Tier 3 and then 4, and then also be able to clear them effectively, so we'll get to that once we're at that part. To start out, we make our character, choose World Tier 2, and then simply farm Helltide. To do that, you'll focus on events to maximize your XP. The best thing you can possibly do for XP while you're in there, though, is the ritual to farm the Blood Maiden, assuming it's being summoned on repeat and killed by fellow XP grinders on the ults, which by now should be relatively normal. They've even made it easier in World Tier tier 1 and 2 to do that, the ritual costs 2 hearts instead of 3, so the event should always be going. If it's not, you could put 1 heart in yourself, and that probably triggers another player standing there to use theirs. Just remember during your leveling that enemies up to 30 levels above you are worth increased XP. So using profaned mind cages through this whole process whenever in Helltide is certainly worth thinking about. Also, try to avoid opening chests until the end of the Helltide to be the highest level possible when you're opening them. They simply reward more XP the higher level you are at the time when you're opening them, so open them later rather than right away. At level 35 then, you can now equip Sacred Gear. It's up to you when you want to get into World Tier 3. You could do it ASAP or wait until you're closer to level 35 to actually equip that gear. It's just never been easier to beat the Capstones, so you absolutely want to go as early as you can where you can survive and farm XP once you're in there. Just be warned that World Tier 3 on average is the lowest populated tier at this stage of the game, since most people are either in World Tier 2 during early leveling or World Tier 4 forever now they've got it unlocked. But for us, when we're in World Tier 3, you can continue to farm Helltides, but it would be much better to go into your first Infernal Hordes with the Tier 1 version now available. The mob density here is ridiculous, the amount of elites to farm, it just leads to incredible XP, as well as great rewards. The problem with that method is that you have to do it yourself, compared to standing at a ritual site with loads of other people in the open world. But if you can do well in a Tier 1, its XP is worth it. If not, you can chill in Helltide ritual site farming until you're ready for World Tier 4. Having said that, you want to push into World Tier 4 as soon as you're able. It's going to be full of players helping you farm ritual sites, you get more XP than World Tier 3, and you probably die there a lot when you first get to it, but you know, the XP is amazing. Around level 50 is probably a reasonable time to do it, if not sooner. Just remember though, Ancestrals can be equipped at level 55, so that's the absolute latest you want to be entering World Tier 4. Now, when in World Tier 4, we have access to higher tiers of Infernal Hordes, Nightmare Dungeons, and maybe even eventually Pit to think about. Between them, you want to go for the Hordes every time. The raw XP, so much better. Not only that, you get masterworking materials, you get gem fragments, summoning materials for the bosses, upgrade materials, all the good stuff. Then there's the gear chest, which is going to provide a ton of aspects to work into a build. The new uniques are found here. And at tier 3 and above, you actually get access to the greater equipment chest for 60 Aether to open, which should always be open. Contextually, at tier 2, the enemies are going to be level 75, so take that on as soon as you're able. At tier 3, the enemies shoot up to level 100 though, which is well worth farming if you're strong enough to clear it. We get the compasses for these hordes through crafting and drops, and you get a pile of them when you eventually farm some Nightmare Dungeons for Glyph XP too. During Infernal Hordes, you want to be maximizing your Aether so that you can get as many chests open at the end. To do that, take the boons that increase the event spawn rate and Hellborn anything. You can destroy events fast and move to the next, and you can drag Hellborn to the events and kill them at the same time. Things like the Lord bosses are going to be worth a lot less since they have bigger health pools and mechanics to deal with. They might even teleport, wasting your time. It's better to pack mobs together while moving from event to event as efficiently as you can. So my advice overall at this stage, the last part, is to prioritize farming Infernal Hordes for XP the highest tier you can handle, whether that's tier 2 or 3 most likely. If tier 2 at level 75 enemies is actually too low for you, but tier 3 is too hard for you with the level 100, during that period, then just go farm Nightmare Dungeons for Glyph XP. You're going to want to do it eventually, and you'll get more compasses to work with. But as a tip, if you're doing Nightmare Dungeons at any point, keep in mind that events in there are worth the best XP. They'll spawn a ton of mobs, wave after wave in one spot, and you can chain clear them. If you ever find one, whether you trigger one at a chest or a shrine, stick around and clear it as much as you can. But there you have it. That's the advice and method to actually consider, whether you're going to be boosted or, hey, actually do it yourself. If you guys have any extra tips or information I didn't mention though, be sure to drop that in the comments. But otherwise, good luck with your alt leveling, and until next time, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.